Hello, and welcome to a new series called Nintendo Retrospective. I'm your host, Lone Wolf, and today I will be discussing the Nintendo Game Boy. So, the purposes for this new series is to talk about, each Nintendo console, talk about its history, and talk about my history with it, and just talk about the games and what games I recommend for the system. Alright, so the Game Boy. So the Game Boy was Nintendo's most widely their first popular handheld that obviously everyone grew and remember playing fondly of. Um, Nintendo originally, obviously, when it came to handhelds, experimented with the handheld called the Game and Watch, which was the predecessor to the Game Boy. The Game and Watches were Nintendo's first success throughout Japan and North America. The Game and Watches were a series of LCD games, micro games that basically they almost came out from a calculator. There was a bunch of these games that came out, whether there was games based on Nintendo IPs or just random games like ball, tennis. There was also, I think, Octopus was one of them. Parachute was one. There was Zookeeper, and then there was like obviously some based on like Mario, Zelda, some based on Disney. I think there was one based on Popeye as well, if I remember. But there was a bunch of these Game and Watches that were made. And the same man that designed the Game and Watch, Gunpei Yokoi, would obviously led to designing the Game Boy. So let's get a little bit of the history of the Game Boy. The Game Boy was an idea decided by Nintendo's R&D one, and the idea was Yokoi thought of a successor to the Game and Watch, but at that time he thought, all right, well, Game and Watches are already popular. I actually think there's something unique that we can do with our handhelds. At the time, Nintendo was gaining popularity thanks to their successful Famicom in Japan, of course, which we would know that as the NES. And the Famicom was doing popular, and Yokoi believed that why don't we make the next handheld having interchangeable cartridges, and it would be basically an NES on the go. And some of his team members thought it was impossible to do something like that, but there's some people the higher ups at Nintendo that thought that would be an interesting idea. The Famicom's doing popular. Why don't we make a version of it on the go? So Yokoi and his team at R&D one decided to actually design the architect of the system, and Yokoi believed that they would actually create a affordable version of the Famicom that obviously could be used on the go. And most people at his team were skeptical because when he decided to cut costs on production, one of the causes was give it a what you see here, this green spinach screen. It basically it obviously is not a good screen, but it was one of the key reasons why the Game Boy became successful. Another was also because they wanted the Game Boy to last longer. They wanted it to run for 30 hours straight of gameplay. So they knew they had to cut down costs in order for it to be affordable, because that was the main reason what they wanted it to be successful. They wanted this to be affordable, and they wanted to have quality games. And some people at his team kind of called it Dame, which basically means like useless in Japanese. And most people thought that Yokoi was insane for not including a backlit screen, and he thought that he thought that at the time that it was the only way that they could make this affordable and it would sell well. And he was right, because the Game Boy would launch in Japan in April 21st of 1989, and the system itself would become a success. And when this thing was going to launch in North America, Nintendo of America was actually planning. They were actually planning on including Mario Land on the go at the time. But a man named Hank Rogers told Nintendo of America president at the time, Minoru Arakawa, that that if they included Mario with the Game Boy would just be for little kids. But if Tetris, the game you see here, is included with the Game Boy will be for everyone. And that was a really, really good decision because when you think about Tetris being included for the Game Boy was not only just purchased by gamers, it was purchased by everyone who wasn't even into gaming. Tetris was one of the main reasons why the Game Boy sold pretty good because many people wanted the Game Boy for one reason, and that was Tetris. And that drove the success of the Game Boy. The Game Boy obviously came out in July 31st of 1989, and the Game Boy would prove on to be a worldwide success. The Game Boy was obviously like the first mobile gaming experience ever. It just, in a way, the Game Boy basically innovative, just on the go gaming, and it's definitely a system that revolutionized the aspects of handheld and mobile gaming because at the time, if you ever thought of having an NES on the go, you would think that'd be impossible. But the Game Boy was the first system to do it and to just groundbreak what we would see in both handheld and mobile gaming. My personal history with the Game Boy, the Game Boy, I remember getting it for Christmas back in I want to say it was 2000, and I remember getting it, and I obviously got Tetris, and I got Mario and Zelda, and I got. I think I got like a Teenage Ninja Turtles game, and I got a Spider-Man game with it, and I had a blast with the Game Boy. As a kid, I'd never complained about the shitty screen because I really never saw a problem with it. It wasn't until I got older where I realized, oh yeah, the Game Boy, it did have a shitty screen. And that's why Game Boy games nowadays are played differently. And thank God you don't have to use this anymore because there are many options to play Game Boy games. There's obviously the Super Nintendo. There is the Super Nintendo's Super Game Boy add-on, which lets you play just Game Boy games on your TV. And then there is obviously my favorite add-on of all time, the Game Boy player for the GameCube, which in my opinion is the greatest add-on of gaming history. Probably the only good add-on in my opinion. But that lets you play Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games on your TV. And there's many options to play Game Boy games now. You could obviously own a Game Boy Advance SP, and there obviously with the SP there's backlit, so you can definitely play your Game Boy and Game Boy Color games with a better and brighter screen. You can also play, like I mentioned, Game Boy games on a Super Game Boy or a Game Boy player. Or if you want to go the other route, emulation. You can use that route, and it's actually easier to play Game Boy games that way. And so, yeah, for me, the Game Boy is a very special system. I would personally say it's my second favorite handheld because the library that this system had was really incredible. You had an infinite amount of selection of games that you can play, and there were really quality fun titles out there. I'm gonna mention only the ones that I currently have because I don't own every game at the moment, but these are just the ones that I have, and I'll just talk about them. Of course, we first have Tetris, which I don't really think there's really much I gotta say about this game. This game obviously was the game that was packed in with the Game Boy, and this was the main reason that attracted many gamers to own the system in the first place. So, it speaks for itself. Super Mario Land, which was the first, well, not the first, but it was one of the first well-known handheld Mario games to just really hit the scene and also groundbreak future Mario titles on handhelds. Originally, this game was actually meant to be the launch title for the Game Boy, and it was actually meant to be it was meant to be the pack-in title. It did launch when the Game Boy launched, but it was meant to be with the pack-in title. It was actually last thought of at the moment, but until Hank Rogers, who helped Nintendo to secure the rights for Tetris, he basically said, "Hey, look, if you include Mario with the Game Boy, it'll just be for kids. But if you include Tetris, it'll be for everybody. But yeah, really fun game, really great platformer. It's technically Super Mario Brothers on the go, with a different take. Controls feel a little weird. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is still a Mario platformer, but the controls kind of don't age that well, in my opinion. The game itself, in my opinion, doesn't age well either because it's only 4 worlds, which is really short. But other than that, it's still a great game. And hell, this was Princess Daisy's first game, so you can't go wrong. Alrighty, so the next game is Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. Possibly, this would have to be in my top 3. I really, really love this game. This really, really is a great game. It's definitely a great sequel to the first game, and in my opinion, this game expanded more on the overworlds. It expanded on the enemies, the power-ups. I think this game, in my opinion, is just, it's such, I mean, I don't want to say it's forgotten. Some people, like, don't get me wrong, there's people that still remember this game, but it doesn't really get talked about a lot because this game is such a really good, underrated platformer. If I'd have to have a top 5 underrated Nintendo games list of all time, I think this would be in my top 5 because it's such a great, underrated game and one of my favorite games on the Game Boy. And this was obviously the only game that you'd fight Wario, so that's actually a really good game. Donkey Kong. Well, obviously this game is dubbed as Donkey Kong 94, and this game to me is probably one of the main reasons I wanted to get a Game Boy again, because I remember when this game first came out years ago. Well, I mean, I was a kid back then, you know, like, and I wasn't alive when it came out, but like I remember when it was like when Game Boy was still around at the time, and I remember seeing this game. I never paid attention to it because at the time, you know, I was focused on playing N64 a lot, and I didn't really play my Game Boy that much. I did play, like, obviously, like Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, and Kirby, and all the other games, but this game, I didn't really know there was I'll be real, as a kid, I didn't know there was a lot of Donkey Kong games at the time, so I didn't really, like, pay attention to Donkey Kong on other systems, so this game was, I didn't know about it until, like, I was in middle school is when I realized, oh wow, there was Donkey Kong games on the Game Boy. But not only that, but I realized, oh, there's one that's actually worth the play, and it's this one. This game is basically like a predecessor to the Mario versus Donkey Kong games. It has that same gameplay, the same level design. It's a reimagining of the arcade games, but in my opinion, better because it at least has a story more than just the arcade game itself. So definitely a must pick up for the Game Boy. I know there's Donkey Kong Land games as well, which they're great. I don't have those yet, but they're great games. Kirby's Dream Land. Kirby's Dream Land, by the way, it just had its 30th anniversary this month. Actually, last month is when it had its 30th anniversary, but still. Can't believe this game is already 30 years old, man. That's crazy. But this was the first of Kirby games that we would all know and love. And so this, in my opinion, doesn't really need any explanation. You know, if you played a Kirby game, you've played all of them. You know, Kirby games have always been fun games to play. They're more chillaxing games to play because Kirby games the Kirby series in general are series that I don't really like take too serious when it comes to like playing them. I just always just like to play them for fun and they're just great chill games. And this game really needs no introduction when it comes to the simplicity and fun that the game is, and the soundtrack itself still ages pretty good. There's better Kirby games out there now, of course, but still, it's worth to go back to the first game. Metroid 2: Return of Samus. Here's an interesting story about this game. I used to own this as a kid, but the reason I got it was, it's interesting. So, you know when you're a kid back then and you get games like, let's say, if you grew up during the NES, SNES, N64 eras, or, you know, whatever era you grew up in gaming, and, you know, as a kid, you would see a cover of you see a cover of a game and you think the game, like the cover, not the game, the cover looks badass because you're like, oh, dude, the cover looks really badass. So I think this is going to be a great game. So the reason I got the game was because I love the cover. I love Samus's suit, and I thought the cover looked pretty sick. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna actually get this. And I was like, dude, this like the cover looks so badass. I thought the game was gonna be awesome. Then I played it and I was like, okay, what is this? At that time, I didn't know much about Metroid. The only thing I knew about Metroid was from Smash Brothers. So I didn't really fully get into Metroid until Metroid Prime. But it was just one of those things that I owned the game just because I liked the cover, and that was the only reason I got it. But yeah. Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. Obviously, people always say this is the first Legend of Zelda game on a handheld, which obviously is not true because the very first Zelda game was obviously Zelda for the Game & Watch. And confession time, I didn't like this game as a kid. I know, sorry. It's just, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Zelda games are meant to be experienced on home consoles because that's where I feel like Zelda games should only be experienced on. Playing Zelda on a handheld doesn't, to me, I'm just only speaking for myself, it doesn't hold the same experience as like playing a Zelda game on a home console. It doesn't have that same feeling. I didn't give this game much love until I was in high school, is when I realized I started giving this game more appreciation for what it is. At the time, the only Zelda game that I really loved to death for a handheld was Minish Cap. Minish Cap was the only game that I really, really enjoyed and really had a great time with. And that was probably the only Zelda game I really enjoyed on a handheld. I didn't care for the DS games. I have Link Between Worlds. It's a great game. Besides that, I love the Oracle games too. I love those games on the Game Boy Color. I think they're great to play on the Game Boy player for the GameCube. Really great games. But this is definitely a must-own too. I think the best way to play this is, well, like I mentioned, you have the add-ons. You also have the Game Boy Advance SP. I actually recommend just getting the DX version because that is the Game Boy Color version that is better than the original version. But still, it is still a must own for the Game Boy if you're collecting. I mean, it's Link's Awakening. It's a great game. And the main reason why you would own a Game Boy, back then, or if you're starting to collect for the Game Boy and you wanna actually pick the best of the best, this is no exception. This is one of the main reasons why people to this day are trying to collect Game Boy games once again. Obviously, Pokemon really needs no introduction. Pokemon is one of the main reasons the Game Boy became a huge success too. And what I mean by that is that at the time, before Pokemon came out, Game Boy was already losing its popularity, and not a lot of people really cared to own Game Boys back then. So at the time, they thought, okay, the Game Boy isn't doing well. We need something to make it successful. And came this little game right here. Well, obviously, the first versions that came out in Japan in 96 were both red and green. And what drove the popularity of Pokemon was obviously the idea of catching, collecting, and battling Pokemon. And what drove that success too was two key reasons: link battles and trading Pokemons. Those were the main key reasons why the games sold individually well, and why people wanted to own Game Boys back then, because it was the main key reason why the Game Boy was doing financially well, during the late 90s, when at the time most people would have considered the Game Boy to be a fad back then, when they were just, gamers were more interested in like the next gen systems at the time, like the 5th generation. So it was just one of those things where like this game is the main reason why the Game Boy became such a success, and why future Nintendo handhelds would sell great because of Pokemon. And to this day, I mean, Pokemon is such an amazing, such an amazing, impactful franchise that still is standing to this very day. Sure, the new games have been a hit and miss, but you could always look back at the original games and appreciate them for what they are. Obviously, when I think of Gen 1, my favorite version is Pokemon Yellow because it is the ultimate version. It is the special, like it says here, special edition. Well, this is called Special Pikachu Edition, but it's the special version of Gen 1. I always think that, whenever I think of Pokemon games, I just mainly think of the special versions. For example, Gen 2 had Crystal, Gen 3 had Emerald, Gen 4 had Platinum. I think with Gen 5 is when they stopped doing special versions, and ever since then, they don't really do that anymore, which really sucks, but at the same time, it's like, all right, it is what it is. But still, I mean, when I think of Gen 1, I think of the yellow version, because obviously, one main reason I love about it, well, you have all the starters, so that's awesome. So, that was kind of a retrospective on it's. I know it's a little short, but I like to keep these videos as short as I can and just as informative as I can. And it's definitely interesting looking back at it. I mean, the system just turned 33 last month, and it's just crazy how like this system is the main reason why we have handheld gaming what it is today, and just how it's impacted even mobile gaming too. And you got to thank this system for that. And the Game Boy, such an important piece of gaming history, and I think that for me, it's still a fun system to play. Maybe not this model, but I mean, if you're playing on the other models, you're fine. But the Game Boy has an infinite library of games that I definitely would recommend. Games I liked back then. I liked the Donkey Kong Land games, which I did get to play later on. I do recommend those. I also I recommend. Excuse me. I recommend Castlevania for the Game Boy. I also recommend that. There was a Contra game that I do remember playing once. I don't remember what it was called, but but if anyone knows the name for that game, can you just let me know in the comments? Because I remember there was a Contra game that I did like for the Game Boy. That's also another one that I do recommend. Obviously, the Kirby Dream Land sequels, other great games. The World of Final Fantasy games, which are technically the Mana games, those are really fun games too. I know there's others, but I mean it's definitely gonna be a long video if I keep listing them. But hey, like I just want to say happy 33 years to the Game Boy, and let's see what holds up for the next years to come, because I still think the system is still fun to play. This year, I would say it's better to play it on a different Game Boy, but it doesn't hurt. Excuse me, to have this in the collection, because this is an important piece of Nintendo history. So it's really awesome, and gaming history in general. So, but I don't want to end the video yet. I do at least want to show at least one Game Boy game on action. Oh, no. Well, there you go. Certainly not as bad as DSP, but hey, it's something. But that's the Game Boy for you in action, and obviously, more importantly, thanks for watching the video, and I'm going to probably play some more Super Mario Land after I'm done recording this. So thanks for tuning to the video, guys. Hit like, subscribe if you enjoy the content. It really means a lot of subscribing. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.